Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for the decent feedback to the last one. Thought I'd strike while the iron is lukewarm. Get another one in. So this time, thought I'd look at that infamous Vice article about the top 50 greatest landfill indie songs of all time. It's a bit contradictory, that, isn't it? Greatest. So yeah, going to go through the list and see if they are actually landfill or not. Nice little cartoon picture here of some of the characters involved. Not sure they want to be involved. I mean, the fact that Alex Turner's in there and stuff doesn't really make a lot of sense for Landfill Indie, but or Jamie T or the Cribs. I don't really know what's going on. Right, but how are they defining it? They say somewhere between the indie rock revival of the early 2000s and the emergence of poptism. Optimism? Don't even know what that is. In the early 2010s, the UK charts are dominated by a procession of homogenous bands making a type of music that has become to be referred to as landfill indie. Both beloved and despised, Landfill Indie is basically indie rock revival afterbirth. The music industry, upon seeing the meteoric rise of the Strokes, Bloc Party, and Libertines, fanned out across these United Kingdoms in search of white boys with weak jawlines, playing in bands with names like a problematic flavour of Walker Sensations. Banter. Hello to Bombay Bicycle Club and Cajun Dance Party. Dozens upon dozens of Identikit The Somethings bands were plucked from the pavements of regional towns and dropped onto Radio 1's playlists overnight. From the pages of NME to all ages clubs to the share section in Top Man, their presence was inescapable. By the end of the decade, the Kooks' debut would outsell most albums by the Beatles in the UK. Kind of hope so that many years later, though, wouldn't you? I don't know. Scouting for Girls had a slew of top 10 hits, and a band called the Ordinary Boys became so notable they ended up with a song on Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Didn't know that. Good fact. The mass-produced nature of Landfill meant there was a surplus of artists but a dearth of originality, which in turn bred contempt. In 2008, Andrew Harrison of the Word magazine coined the term landfill indie, essentially turning the entire subgenre into a critical punching bag. In a 2009 essay, partly attributing the appetite for electro-pop icons like Lady Gaga, Little Boots and LaRue to winkle picker fatigue, Peter Robinson recalls the first time he visited the Sony HQ off Kensington High Street and wrote Scouting for Girls equals shit on a chalkboard. All these bands, Simon Reynolds similarly reflected in The Guardian in 2010. Where did they come from? Why did they bother? Couldn't they tell they were shit? In many ways, though, the flack levelled at some of these bands was unwarranted. As Razorlight's Johnny Burrell noted in a 2016 Vice interview, bands weren't allowed to develop on their own before they were swept up in the machine. And for all its faults, the landfill era was probably the last time any national outlet regularly published phrases like the Sunderland Trio. Before the knock-on effects of the 2008 financial crisis clustered the entire industry around the M25. The scene booted open the door for people from outside London to become full-time musicians by singing about what they knew, which is what most British people know, that their post-industrial hometown or middle-class suburbia was and is shit. That youth is precious and fleeting, and the most reliable modes of escape are romance and drinking. Sounds like lyrics themselves. Is this one of his poems? Creatively, landfill indie remains one of the least exciting things to happen to music this century. The 2000s birth grime, one of the most significant British musical developments in decades. The mainstream success of emo bands in the US paved the way for countless thriving local scenes. Why is that different? I don't understand that. The initial indie boom peeled off into more experimental, diverse, ultimately short-lived subcultures like new rave and electro clash. All of this was far more exciting and influential than landfill indie, which has gone down in British music history as much as it's been absorbed into British life by osmosis. At some point, these overwhelmingly white, trilby-doff men singing about local boozers, university girlfriends, and World War II became our cultural ground zero, speaking to something so uniquely pedestrian about the British experience that it's become eternally relevant. You can still see bastions of its popularity today, with the Wombats drawing one of the largest crowds at Reading Festival 2019, and the Kooks and Bombay Bicycle Club billed to headline separate days of this year's now cancelled All Points East. This was all during COVID, wasn't it, when this article came out, I seem to remember. Arguably, the true spirit of landfill indie lives on through singer-songwriters like Ed Sheeran and Sam Fender. Probably would agree that those two have quite a derivative landfill sound, to be fair. All of which to say, those who grew up with landfill indie have decided to unpack its enduring emotional appeal by ranking the 50 greatest The 50 greatest, most average songs of all time. Right, so that's how they're defining it then. Like they're saying all these songs are about to list are average basically, but they're the best of at the best, but they're the best of an average bunch. For the sake of this list, we've defined the landfill era as beginning with Pete Doherty, or Doherty, sorry, people keep telling me in the comments, was banned from playing with the Libertines due to substance abuse problems mid 2003 and ending the day Spectre released Chevy Thunder early 2012. It's quite a wide range, that 2012. We're focusing on British bands only, so while Black Kids, I'm not going to teach your boyfriend how to dance with you, and We Are Scientists, the scene is dead. Maybe worthy soldiers for the cause, they are American and therefore too unique to be included in this homogenous group of Isle of Wight fodder. They are American and therefore too unique to be included in this homogeneous group of Isle of Wight festival fodder. Similarly, we have taken all folk leaning, Kate Nash, Jamie T, pop infused, the Ting Tings, Lily Allen, garage rock, the Subways, art rock, Franz Ferdinand, and throwback the Pipettes bands out of the running for being too innovative and therefore not true landfill. The Ting Tings innovative, fair enough. True landfill is a family caravan. I wasn't going to read all this, but it's quite interesting, isn't it? True landfill is a family caravan holiday in August. Kind of shit, kind of a laugh, largely unremarkable. At both its zenith and nadir, it's dry eyes for couples who have fights at Tiger Tiger. Scarf for men who drink bottled lager in polo shirts. It's observational comedy about funerals. A viral video of a fight in a kebab shop. A wooden sign on a wooden sign on a mantelpiece that says, "Today is the perfect day to start living your dreams." We have no choice but to embrace it because it's always there, floundering between waves of nostalgia and indifference. The great British high street of chart music. Emma Garland. Well, Emma Garland, I'm sure I reached out before, maybe. But if you did fancy coming on the pod, let me know. So yeah, overall, there's definitely bits of truth in that I agree with, but they say here they consider it to be one of the least exciting things to happen to music this century. But for someone like me, it's pretty exciting. I think a lot of other people. I also don't agree that a lot of the songs they list are particularly average. But let's go through them now and decide which ones are landfill and which ones are not so landfill. Mr. Understanding, Pete and the Pirates. Thing about this band is I've only realised in recent years that they went on to be Teleman, who are a brilliant band, brilliant Scottish band. So it's hard, isn't it? I wouldn't want to put them in there personally. I don't think they're going to make the cut. However, looking at this incarnation of the band and the fact it came out in 2008, I'm going to have to go Landfill, just because it was a bit derivative of the songs that had come before it. But like I say, I love Teleman, I think they're brilliant, so hopefully not cause too much offence there. The Rifles. Local boy. Wow, this is quite hard, isn't it? I quite enjoyed the Rifles at the time. Went to see them play live in Hull. I'm not putting this as landfill. I think it's a decent song and doesn't really. If anything, its influences are from a different era, maybe like a Paul Weller era rather than a 2000s indie. So that's not going in. 1-1 at the minute. Number 48, House Party at Boothie's, Little Man Tate. Look, that's just going straight in landfill. Not to offend anyone, but for me, they just immediately tick the landfill box. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments if you want. Fair play. The Guillemots. Now, I wasn't particularly into the Guillemots, but I'm not having them as a landfill band, I don't think. I don't think they were particularly derivative of anyone in that scene. Whereas you could argue that Little Monte were, so they're not going in. Back to level pegging. 46, Les Incompetents. Now, I'm not having this as landfill. I think a lot of people argue that it is. But essentially, I think if a song's good enough, then it's not going in. And I think this soundtracked a lot of indie nights back in the day, and it's quite original in its own way, I think. So it's not getting in. The Photos on My Wall by Good Shoes. I mean, there's absolutely no way this is going in the landfill. Absolutely brilliant band. I was listening to their album the other day in the car, and it's fantastic. I think it's not derivative of anyone in that scene. Maybe you could make comparisons to different eras, but yeah, not getting in. So 4-2 currently to non-landfill. Amyles, Cajun Dance Party. I mean, yeah, I don't know much about this band, but I know that they sound exactly like the Kooks, or the singing does anyway. So for that reason, they're going in because they came after the Kooks as well, didn't they? So Landfill claw one back there, 4-3. Jack Pignata. I don't think I'm having him as Landfill. He was kind of doing his own thing, wasn't he? Mates with the Maccabees by all accounts. I thought his songs were quite decent. Didn't particularly annoy me, which I think Landfill is supposed to, isn't it? It's supposed to find Landfill annoying, really. So I'm going to put Pignata in the non-Landfill section, if I can spell his name right. Reminiscent of the House Martins, fair. I mean, that's enough reason by itself not to put them in, so fair enough. Gone Up in Flames at Morning Runner. Right, I'm gonna have to listen to this and get back to you 1 second. Right, of course, it's the In-Betweeners theme tune, which it literally says here. What more do you need to know? I mean, it's a fair point. Um, but I mean, it's more if we're classing Landfill Indie as like what's been ripped off the early 2000s, what was good about that? This is more like Top Loader or something. So I don't think I can put it in there. Controversial, maybe? Have your say in those comments and smash that notification bell. Right. Paddington's obviously Landfill next. Nah. Um, Paddington's like obviously for me, maybe a bit biased, but they're never going to go in the landfill pile for me. As Lloyd once said on this podcast, they weren't a jingly jangly Libertines rip-off band. They're like doing their own thing, like kind of doing their own take on punk in the early 2000s. So they're never going in. Panic Attack. Great song. What interested to know what they wrote about them there. More men with guitars, this time from Hull. Sonically, Panic Attack has much in common with emo and modern punk, as it does with Landfill Indie. But with a name like the Paddingtons, it was always going to find itself on this list. Okay. The second single from the band's debut album is the most memorable for being about a man in crisis. Over a driving guitar line, lead singer Tom Atkin witnesses his own mood from the center of a depressive episode as he raps and howls towards some sort of conclusion that he doesn't want to die. That just sounds like a normal review rather than why it's Landfill. But I guess these people are kind of bigging up these songs as to be like the best Landfill songs, but it doesn't really apply to me. So the Paddingtons going in the non-Landfill pile. Non-Landfill running away with it at the minute, to be honest. What are we on here? 7-3. So many to go. Romantic type. I mean, let's not spend long on this. It's Landfill, Pigeon Detectives. People will hate me for that. People won't like that opinion, and it's not like a big diss on them. It's just like it definitely is derivative and something I wouldn't want to revisit personally. Yeah, it just doesn't do a lot for me, but I appreciate people will defend them and tell me how many records have sold and how the recent gigs have been amazing and fair play to them. But yeah, not for me really. Maximo Park. I don't think we're having Maximo Park as a landfill band. I think they were doing their own thing from fairly early on in the 2000s. Our Velocity is not particularly one of my favorite songs of theirs, but still, definitely some originality in there. Hounds of Love. No chance this can be landfill for me. Futureheads definitely putting their own spin on things and on this cover. It's definitely one of the better songs of the early 2000s period. And yeah, no chance that and they're definitely doing their own thing, so no chance they're going into the landfill pile. Munich editors, interesting one. I do think a key word in all this is interesting as well, isn't it? Like, is it interesting? I think this song is interesting. I would listen to it again. You could say it's derivative of someone like Interpol, but I still think there's enough about it to put it in the non-landfill pile. So they're making it and adding to the lead of the non-landfill. Kilimanjaro, I mean, mental. To me, that is a mental song to call Landfill. I don't know. Like, it's so good, one of the best, especially this version of it. One of the best songs you'll hear on a night out. So definitely not. Won't waste any more time on that. Somewhere else, Razorlight. It would be easy to hammer Razorlight and say they are landfill indie, but for me, they're probably not. They kind of made the mark in the earlier 2000s, even though I'm not a massive fan of this song. And this is one of those songs where you'd think you don't want to hear it, but when it comes on, you quite enjoy it. So for me, again, non-landfill for me. She's attracted to, probably in the same vein as the last song. It's not one that I'd have massively fond memories of, but the Young Knives are a great band, I think. It would be easy to throw them in the landfill pile, but they've got enough about them to be interesting. And for that reason, they're going into the ever-growing non-landfill pile. Stambol's the others. I think one of these is our mate Jodie from Hull on that cover. Yeah, again, not a song I'm particularly into, but it was more in those early 2000s. I think it does have enough about it to make the non-landfill pile. So it's going in. And I won't be getting any annoyed emails from Dominic Masters. What you know, wow, I wouldn't even put Two Door Cinema Club with this kind of era, but instead they've gone up to 2012. But I can't have this as Landfill. It's a great song, I think. Massively takes me back to being at uni, actually. Um, so yeah, it's not good, and I think it's got enough about it definitely to avoid the landfill tag. Good books, right? Gonna have to listen to this one because I have no idea what this sounds like. Yeah, from a brief listen there, it's pretty derivative. Could probably say it's quite similar sounding to someone like the Mystery Jets, but not as good, is how I'd say it. So yeah, that's one for the landfill for me. Argue away if you think that is a nonsense opinion. Woolly Bridge. I mean, what a tune. We are not having Bromwell's Jacket in Landfill Indie. Definitely not. This was one of the great songs they had back in the day. I actually wanted to go see them when they reformed not so long ago. Um, but didn't manage to get a ticket. But yeah, they're not going in. Bromwell's Jacket, firmly not Landfill Indie. Monster Automatic. I mean, wow. It's definitely one of those songs that became annoying quite quickly. But at one point, it was quite a good laugh on a night out. And I have a good memory of seeing them in Sunderland. You know what? I don't think it's going in. People will say that's a bit mental, but I don't think it's proper landfill. I don't feel it's like, yeah, I think there's enough about it to keep it out of there. Daddy's Gone, Las Vegas. I don't think Las Vegas were particularly of this era. I don't feel like. I know they were in terms of time period, but they're kind of doing their own thing in a way. I was never that into it, to be honest. I know, like, they're quite critically acclaimed and like other bands seem to like them a lot, but anyway, they're not getting to the landfill pile. Wombats, right. This is quite a divisive one, maybe. I think for me, they do kind of meet the criteria of landfill, even though, like a lot of these landfill bands have had good careers and are still going. But it is quite derivative to me and it doesn't do a lot for me. Um, even though I'd probably enjoy it maybe if it came on the radio, would I? Maybe like as a one-off. For me, that I think I've got to stick to my guns on this one and say landfill indie for this. Soz lads, for lovers. I mean, people are going to say that I'm biased towards like Doherty and Libertines, but yeah, I think I probably am. The early 2000s Libertines and Baby Shambles stuff is just never going to be landfill indie to me. Just like way too much about it to be considered too derivative or anything. And it's like this video for me is probably some sort of the peak of that whole era and like what it represented. So there's no way it's going in there. But we're putting in there Pete Doherty by himself and Wolfman, obviously. Lucia starts fires again. You just from the name alone, you'd probably say it's got to be. But if you listen to this song, it's brilliant. It's pretty brilliant. That's over the top. If you listen to the song, it's great. I think there's definitely enough about it to say it's to keep it out of the landfill indie pile for me. So yeah, that's not going in. Interesting story about them choosing not to release the first album they recorded, or the only album they recorded. And there's a video about that. I'll put it in the description. Milburn. I could attempt to dress this up, and they do have catchy songs that I probably enjoyed at the time. But the description here probably sums it up. Milburn were condemned to languish in the shadows of Arctic monkeys, and that's kind of what Landfill's about, isn't it? Like people doing things in the shadow or being in the shadow of bands that came before them or just before them. So I'm sure that'll annoy people of a certain taste, but they've got to be in there for me. Again, they're doing great things, much better things than I'm doing, so fair play to them. The View, another one that you could say are highly influenced by that early period. But again, they probably have enough about them to keep them out of the landfill pile. So I'll go non-landfill. The Enemy, wow. I did really enjoy the enemy's early demos that were on MySpace. It's just because I'm really like alternative in that. But by this point, oh God, the enemy. They might have to go in there, you know. They're on a knife edge, but I'm going to say they have enough about them to keep them out of there. I think those early demos for me were really good. I enjoyed them. And like I've said before about the other bands, if anything, they were influenced by a different era rather than the early 2000s. So they're keeping out of there. Maximo Park, yeah, still staying out of there, especially with that song, Apply Some Pressure. It's not getting into Landfill Indie. She's Got You High by Mumra. I'm going to shoot from the hip on this one and say not Landfill. I think this song was in Spotify playlist I did of Naughty's Indie One Banger Wonders. So they're going to survive the cut for that reason alone. See What the Lights 1990 is going to have to listen to this as don't have any recollection of it. Yeah, it's probably got enough about it to survive the landfill tag. It's more influenced by the likes of Ash, I'd say. And it mentions Bobby Gillespie here. So yeah, I don't think it's going to make the landfill cut. Quite a rubbish name, that, to be fair. Two Doors Down, Mystery Jets, absolutely nowhere near landfill. One of the best songs of that period to hear on a night out. Absolutely brilliant. Brilliant band. More than interesting enough to keep it out of the landfill pile for me. Again, the same with the Cribs, Men's Needs. I mean, as much as the Cribs are never going to be a landfill band, this is the closest they got, I think. Even though Men's Needs was brilliant when it came out, it kind of got commandeered by that lad band crowd, I remember. And they were flirting with that kind of audience for a while there, I think. But it's a brilliant song. Even though it's annoyingly like the only Cribs song you'll hear on radio, probably. Yeah, it's never going to make the landfill tag. Valerie by the Zootons. I'd almost say the Amy Winehouse version was more landfill, just because he got so overplayed and was like definitely one you'd leave the dance floor for me. Whereas the Zootons, they were pretty good in the early 2000s. That first album was pretty iconic. So yeah, they're not getting in there. Fair play to them. Kooks, another divisive one, but for me, the Kooks were pretty great when they came out. And anything off that first album gives me great memories of seeing them live and just generally having a good time in those early 2000s. So yeah, they're not going in, I'm afraid. Survive the landfill. Down to 14, the Maccabees, never going in there. Especially a song off the first album. It's just great. Original, exciting. Never going to be landfill. If you want it, yes, please, let's get them in there. Let's get the vaccines in the landfill, I'm afraid. I know they've got a lot of fans in there were pretty big at one point, but it was pretty derivative and uninteresting, I thought. That's why they're going in there. Bombay Bicycle Club. I don't think you can say it's landfill. It didn't particularly light my candle at the time, but it's decent to listen to. And it's not really of that era, so nah. 11, Ordinary Boys. I mean, if any song from the Ordinary Boys is going to go in, it's going to be this one. But there's enough about that first album that keeps them out for me. That first album was great. And again, probably influences from a different era rather than the 2000s. Bang Bang You're Dead. Bang Bang You're Dead, Dirty Pretty Things. I mean, I don't think Dirty Pretty Things had as much about them as the likes of Baby Shambles, obvious comparison to make. However, they did shine brightly for a bit and were pretty interesting. And I don't really think you can put this song in there. So they're going to survive the cut. 22 grand job. I mean, what's to say? Never going in. The Rakes, brilliant band. Definitely one of the better albums from that period. And influenced some great podcasts in the time. Mighty Bum Mighty Monkeys, absolutely insane to call it landfill. I don't understand that. Uh, I mean, what's to say? It's just never going to be landfill, is it? One of the most innovative bands of that time. Right, down to the Cribs. Hey, Scenesters, again, never going in. Simple as that, really. Let's move on from that one. Not 19 Forever, right? This is going to be controversial, but for me, they're going in. People have been on my back about not liking the Cortinas. It's not I don't like them, I just don't find them particularly interesting. And that's exactly why they're going to have to go in landfill for me. just a bit derivative and a bit uninteresting. The fact that Gary Neville thinks they're brilliant says it all for me. So yeah, no worries. Lyric in Love, never going to be Landfill. Pretty brilliant band who lived for a short time, but made a pretty impressive impact with some great songs and some interesting songs that stand the test of time, really. So never going in. Naive the Kooks, again, first album Kooks just isn't Landfill for me. People of an older generation or slightly older might dispute that and put them straight in, but for me, definitely had enough about them and made enough of an impact to not go into Landfill Indie for me. Razorlight again, probably survived the cut for the same reason. First album Razorlight. People can argue it's not very good if they want. I think it's pretty good. And it was definitely good at the time. And for me, it's not particularly derivative of early 2000s. Johnny Burrell was kind of doing his own thing, and it's not going into landfill. So yeah, the Razorlight stay non-landfill. F Forever, Baby Shambles. Never gonna go into landfill. It's one of the best songs of the era for me. Again, people of a slightly older age, maybe more cynical about that, and I can appreciate that now more that I'm older. But I still think it's brilliant, especially some maybe not this actual recording of it, but certain recordings of it were great and kind of embodied a lot of that spirit from what was good about the early 2000s. Number one, I mean, all day long, this is going to go in landfill. Fair play to them. They will have sold a lot of records and still getting played at football grounds up and down the country when a goalie scored. So yeah, good one to finish on actually, Chelsea Dagger Fratellis, because that is pretty much nailed on landfill. Okay, so scores on the doors roughly. Looking at 10 landfill bands there that have made the cut. Well, I say made the cut, been kind of designated to landfill. And then looking at 35 bands that avoided the cut. So couldn't really agree with the article here. Maybe they should just done the top 10 and then that would have worked for them. Still a bit conflicted about Pete and the Pirates because I do love Teleman so much. But again, we'll live by that. We'll live by that particular sword. So yeah, what do you make of that? Any glaring errors I've made there? Anything you want to defend? Anything you want to put down into landfill? Have your say in those comments.